but believed by few.
And experts say there.
Then head to BeyondRealityRadio.com. You can find all the stations we are on across the country. You can download the free Android or smart iPhone app. You can also listen right from the website by clicking the pop-up button. And we try to make it easy. If you download the show from iTunes or anywhere else, just do us a favor and rate it for us. It helps push it forward and makes it easier for people to find, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's a great way to participate in everything we've got going on here, and we appreciate everybody doing that. Also, when you're on our Facebook page, feel free to throw things up. We're always looking for photos and people to share their paranormal stories. It's the kind of thing that we like to read, and sometimes we share them on the air too. We like to know what people are seeing.
And you're notorious for sharing some of your old modeling pictures.
You're notorious for sharing some of my old modeling pictures.
So you are admitting those are yours.
No, they're not mine.
Wait, hang on. This is very confusing. So, all right, I haven't really gotten in depth in this story, but have you heard about this guy who was charged with firing a gun at a ghost?
No, but I want to.
Oh, my gosh. All right, so this Christian DeVoe, 25, lives in Connecticut. And the officers, all right, so he lives in Vernon, officers found there was a warrant for his arrest after pulling him over for illegal discharge of a firearm and making false statements to police, second-degree reckless endangerment, misusing an emergency call, and disorderly conduct. This story gets weirder as it goes on, though. According to an affidavit supporting his arrest, DeVoe dialed 911 early in the morning of July 26 to report that a man wearing a hooded sweatshirt and a mask and holding a rifle had broken into his home. While he was on the phone with dispatchers, he could be heard yelling, "Hey," and firing 2 shots into an apparent attempt to scare off the intruder. That's what the troopers are saying. The investigators who arrived at his home, however, found no evidence that the residence had been broken into or anything that this mysterious man is supposedly in his yard with a gun or coming into his home with a gun. A trained dog failed to pick up a scent in the area. The affidavit states, and a canvass of the streets turned up nothing suspicious. In addition, neighbors said they did not hear or see anything that morning that would have made them raise any eyebrows, except for 2 gunshots, of course, going off. So, troopers, this guy's sworn statement, he was describing firing 2 bullets as warning shots that he intentionally, supposedly aimed over the intruder's head. Investigators found the scenario unlikely because after ballistics analysis showed that the 2 bullets had punctured a wall in DeVoe's home less than 3 feet off the floor. So that's strange enough. So after state police uncovered even more just things with this story, including shell casings discovered in front of the home, DeVoe told troopers that there are some things he just can't explain, like seeing ghosts.
Wow.
Now, you heard that right. He told police that he is a paranormal investigator for 5 or 6 years and most recently encountered an apparition at the former Mansfield Training School and Hospital. He also said he didn't want to be considered insane. He had allowed for the possibility that the intruder was of supernatural origin. And that's why the dogs and nobody else picked it up.
Wow. Can you shoot a ghost? I mean,
if you're trying to shoot a ghost with a gun, chances are you're really not a paranormal investigator, and you might be a little insane.
The only thing you can really shoot a gun with, and we've learned this from, I think, as of 1984, is those proton packs that the Ghostbusters used. And just as long as you don't cross the streams, you're good.
Well, yeah, so he was released after posting a $5,000 bond, and I don't know, it's definitely strange. Let's just say that, and I don't think anybody should be firing at what they believe to be a ghost if that's truly what they think it is. Just imagine who could be on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of danger inherent in that particular practice. I wouldn't recommend it at all.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder if this story has any truth behind it, or was he just randomly shooting
and just using that was his excuse. So
well, yeah, because initially it was a masked guy broke into his house with a rifle, and then it became a ghost that he was shooting at. And he's shooting 3 feet off the floor. I don't know, just none of it makes any sense.
No, I see no sense in it whatsoever.
So whatever, to each their own.
All right, so we're going to be bringing DB Moffatt in just a few moments, talk about his book, The Misbirth. Also talk about fate, which is what the book basically it touches that topic plus many others about growing up and trying to deal with the circumstances that you've grown up into and trying to avoid outcomes that seem likely because of those circumstances. So we'll have that conversation in a minute. We're also going to do something fun tonight, Jay. We're going to have themed bumper music, and at the end of the show,
take a quick break. A lot more to come. You listen to Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with a buzz and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full.
Welcome back to the show. It's Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. Remember to keep track of the bumper music. We're going to do a little what was the theme for the bumper music tonight contest at the end of the show. We'll let you call in and see if you can figure out what the common thread was with all the songs we played tonight.
No, the thing is, when you'd pull this stuff, you don't even tell me half the time.
I know, I like to see you guess, too.
Jeez, but I don't win anything for it. So
well, you win bragging rights a little bit. But you can't say it first, though, as long as you don't say it. You have to write it down and hold it up to the video camera.
All right, we'll see.
All right, so we're going to be talking about a whole
for this new book, and I start out, before I can do anything, I start out with a title, which is a little bit unusual. And the word misbirth just happened to come to me given the context of what I was going to be writing about. And to my knowledge, guys, I don't recall consciously ever reading or hearing the word before, but it did sound appropriate for the material that I was going to be covering in the book. And so I consulted two different dictionaries to ascertain its exact definition. And to my surprise, the word misbirth was not listed in either of those dictionaries, which kind of sealed the title deal for me. And so I went from there.
So tell us kind of in a nutshell here what the book is about, because I know it covers and crosses a lot of themes. So as best you can, sum it up for us.
In essence, culminates in the father violently raping the then 11-year-old girl. She becomes pregnant, which was an extremely hard chapter for me to write. In fact, the chapter is exactly 1 page and 2 lines because we have two daughters. But I felt that had to be included in the book to really graphically explain the emotional situations of at least 2 of the 3 main characters in the misbirth. Anyway, the wife finds out about her daughter's situation and discreetly arranges to have the pregnancy terminated. The physician who is going to take care of the procedure is a middle-aged man who is married, and he and his wife are unable to have children. And in lieu of terminating the pregnancy, he induces birth, and it turns out to be a little boy that he presents to his wife and they raise as their own. At the age of 16, the young man receives an athletic scholarship at a very prestigious prep school. And as one of the inducements for him to attend, it's an athletic scholarship actually, and one of the inducements is he's going to be given his own private tutor to help him prepare for the SATs. And as it turns out, the young female tutor is a PhD and also happens to be the same 11-year-old girl so violently abused by her father 16 years earlier. And that, guys, is basically where the misbirth starts. That's where the book actually begins.
Wow. You know, when particularly when you talk about fiction, authors always have an inspiration for the stories they write. In this particular case, you must have an inspiration for, at least for the reason you wrote this particular book. What would that be?
Well, I don't know if it was so much inspiration as it was basically a recounting of some of the years that I experienced as a younger man, if you will. And the characters, by and large, in the misbirth are are all were all people that I came in contact with during the course of those years, and I just thought it would be sort of a provocatively entertaining read for a pretty large swath of the reading public, which is why I proceeded with the book.
So a lot of the characters in the book are actually based on people that you met or lived with or had relationships with during the course of your life?
Absolutely, yes.
So I wouldn't go as far as saying this is autobiographical, but however, were you in any way trying to help resolve some of those relationships for yourself by telling those stories?
Not really. That's a great question, because people have asked me how difficult it was to sit down and sort of relive those past experiences, and I found it to be really not difficult at all, which put me in a rather good mood because it indicated to me that that chapter of my life, no pun intended, is definitely behind me. And as I say, I wanted it to be sort of a different sort of fictional read, and by and large, from some of the feedback I'm getting, that goal was accomplished.
One of the, I guess, headlines for the announcements of the book when it was released is and I'll quote it here, "New novel dramatically explores the deadly role of fate for one dysfunctional family." And we're going to talk a lot about how fate plays a role, not just in your story, but in our lives. But is the central theme of the book fate?
I think to a great extent, fate is a central role. And when I chose fate, again, it was because I wanted it to be a theme that a goodly number of people could relate to. And as I say, as fate, what I mean is, who amongst us has not been walking down the pathway of life, minding their own business, obeying all the
break and a lot more to come. You listen to Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
Day is night in New York City. Smoke like water runs inside. Steal out of the trees to pity every living thing that's died. Gonna hitch a ride, head for the other side. Leave it all behind, never change my mind. Gonna sail away, sunlight's another.
the show. It's Beyond Reality Radio, Jason JV. Our guest tonight, DB Moffatt, he's the author of a book called The Misbirth, and we're going to be talking about the themes that book has throughout it, and some of the characters, and we'll be taking your calls a little later in the program at 844-687-7669. One of the themes, and we introduced this idea before the break, that the book focuses on is fate. And DB, let's start talking about fate a little bit. First of all, I'm not so sure. It may sound like a simple answer, or the question may sound a little naive, but what exactly is fate?
I believe fate is essentially, I hate to use the term preordained, but essentially fate is an aspect of life that presents itself to most people during the course of their lives. And as I said earlier, will present them with a set of circumstances or situations or events that pretty much dictate the course of the rest of their lives. And I think the key element in fate is how people deal with the circumstances that fate has thrown at them. And again, as I said earlier, through no necessarily doing or fault of their own, and yet they have no choice but to handle the situation as best they can. And unfortunately, many people tend not to handle fate very well because more times than not, the reaction is, hey, this was not my fault, and therefore I'm not responsible for what I say or do or anything else. It's kind of the poor me syndrome, if you will. And I think really the essence of the misbirth is trying to, again, this is going to sound kind of trite, but there's a reason adages have grown to be old with us, and that is you've got to try to take a negative and make that negative a positive. And I think that's really the essence of the misbirth is taking the idea that, hey, although this wasn't my dealing, this was not my doing, not my fault for once in my life, and making the best of those circumstances.
It's sort of as many times as you get knocked down, you just want to get up and compose yourself and keep on moving forward.
Well, pretty much. That's a nice way to put it. Which again is a lot easier said than done, but I think if one can learn to take solace again in the fact that, hey, although I've got to deal with this, this was not my fault, and I think people can derive an inner strength from that knowledge that they did not create an unpleasant situation for themselves or those around them, and if they can move forward with that thought in mind, I think it makes them and the people around them better human beings.
Is everybody subject to fate, or do we make our own fate?
Again, you guys are very, very insightful questions. I like that. I'd have to say that's a pretty even-Steven split. I think people can, through doings of their own, create those circumstances that they ultimately have to deal with. In the case of my book, The Misbirth, the three main characters had nothing to do with the circumstances that surrounded their lives from the very day
of where you're going and how things are going in your life. And
Absolutely.
you can't stop that because the minute they're there, that's sort of changed that path.
Very, very true. Very true. In fact, in my case, that was what changed my path for the better. And that person was Cindy, my wife. And I knew from the very first time that I saw her that I wanted to be with her, and I knew she was my girl, if you will. Took her a while to figure that one out, but so basically, her inspiration is really what altered my path, as you put it, or my course in terms of life. And I'm pleased to report that many, many years later, Cindy and I are still fighting happily ever after together. So,
well, and that's an incredible thing, and I think we all have similar stories to that. Of course, our better halves, when they came into our lives, they shaped who we were, and they sort of guided us on a path that without them would have been very dark.
Very so very true.
DB, is fate, and you've already answered this to a degree, but I want to ask the question and just explore it a little bit more. But is fate itself always? I want to use the word bad, but that's not necessarily what I'm saying. Is it always something that we have to struggle with, or is it something that we can embrace? Because it seems as though when we say, "Oh, that's up to fate," we kind of have thrown our hands up and given up on shaping our own future.
Well, to try to answer that question, I would say that to a fairly large extent, people can play a role in their fate. As I say in the book, they had no real. It wasn't. They had nothing to do with the circumstances. The book really details how they handled the circumstances that fate dealt them. But more times than not, you or one, I should say, can create their fates through their own actions or inactions, depending upon the circumstances.
The characters in your book that are subject to dealing with their fate and trying to, I guess, persevere despite of the circumstances that they find themselves in or were born into. Do they become heroes or heroines in the book, or are they victims?
In the case of the Misbirth, they become victims more than heroes, and which is not necessarily to mean that it's a depressing down read. I don't think it is, but essentially, given the way they handle the circumstances that presented themselves to them, again through no fault of their own, they did not handle those circumstances as best as they could have or should have.
Well, and I totally agree with you. It's not a depressing type read, but I will be honest. When I first got it, I was sitting at the counter with the wife, and I was looking, and I read the back, and I'm like, why the hell? This is the most disturbing type of story I think ever. But then as you start reading into it, you really get locked in. You get enthralled with it.
Well, I will say, I'm not at the expense of trying not to sound self-serving. The book was specifically written to be a fast-paced, provocatively entertaining read, and I think one of the, for me, the soul of literature, of fiction, is dialogue, and as such, if you look at any given page of the book, 70% of it is dialogue, because for me, over description I think becomes tedious, and I've always been far more into what the characters in the book are thinking, saying, and ultimately doing.
Well, and I agree with you. I don't care if the wind was blowing. I don't care about all these different factors. Of course,
How green are the trees? Of the book.
All right, we're talking with DB Moffatt about his book called The Misbirth and the central themes in the book. We're going to continue the conversation on the other side of the break.
All right, there's a lot more to come. You're listening to Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
Write down the telephone number, 844-687-7669. We'll take your phone calls later in the program. Don't forget, tomorrow night, we've got Michael Bryan joining us. He's the travel psychologist. We'll be talking about his book. He's got a couple, actually, that he's co-authored with Rosemary Ellen Guiley, a good friend of the program, someone we've had on a few times. We always enjoy having Rosemary Ellen on. And Michael wrote the Road to Strange series with her, including the Road to Strange Travel Tales of the Paranormal and Beyond, and the Road to Strange UFOs, Aliens, and High Strangeness.
And make sure you're listening to the bumper music, because JV's he's trying to pull one on all of us. Pull one on all of us. So he hasn't even told me what the whole thing is, but there's some connection with this bumper music.
Oh, it'll be fun to figure it out. Don't forget, Friday is a best of program, of course, and then we've got a great week of shows coming up next week. Tonight we're talking with DB Moffatt about his book called The Misbirth. And DB, would you say this is a tragic story?
Yes, I would classify it in the
beginning part,
within the confines of classic tragedy.
Right.
I mean, it's not. How do I put it? I think there's a distinction between tragedy and depression or despair kind of thing. It's as I say, it's more along the lines of the classic tragedies of many years ago, if you will.
The book also deals with the topic of teen angst in boys. What are we talking about when we talk about teen angst?
Well, right off the bat, I can only speak from my own experience in terms of teen angst, and specifically how it related to my high school experience. When I was the only one of my group of friends that went on to the particular public high school. Most of them went on to boarding schools, prep schools, whatever you call them. And right off the bat, I was kind of an outcast for the reason that everybody in that school knew each other, prior to attending the high school. So right off the mark, I was kind of a marked guy, if you will. And the other experience that I happened to have was that I didn't experience my adolescent growth spurt until nearly the age of 15. So if you're running around as a freshman or whatever, sophomore, at with the height of 5'3", and you're already, an outsider, it can make the high school experience a little precarious at times. But that I'm just speaking from my own experience. And the other thing I would say too, when it comes to parting female experience of those the disparity in those particular ages.
I think we've all, if we don't remember our own teenage years, we certainly know someone who has recently gone through them, whether it's a niece, nephew, child, whatever it happens to be. And those are just difficult times to begin with. Do you think that as society has changed, and your book starts with the story in the 50s, it was a very, very different America in the 50s. Do you think as those times have changed that teen angst and the process of being a teenager is more difficult or easier?
I think today, in many, again, a very, very topical question, because I think today, in many respects, it's far more difficult. And again, I'm a third party observer, obviously, but I think teenage bullying, school bullying today is far more acute and far more vicious than it was when I was going through those years, and I think that's a direct result of social media, because it's very easy to, get online and say anything you want about anybody and get, a bunch of people to kind of go along with you and corroborate that. And in fact, there was the tragic have to say it to their face. You
And
know
I
what I'm
think that
saying?
that's a-
I mean,
that's
it
a-
was
yeah, that's a big
upfront
difference.
and personal.
that's-
And now they can pretty much say anything they want and get a whole, wide audience. And once the crowd turns, it just must be very, very devastating for a younger person to have to come to grips with that sort of that bullying, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. As a father of 6 kids, I've seen the online bullying and just through social media, and it'll drive you nuts. All right, we got to take a break. Our guest is DB Moffatt, author, and we're talking about his book, The Misbirth. You're listening to Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
Captured by your style.
paranormal that cannot be explained by scientific methods.
Told of a creature that was 6.5 to 7 feet tall.
The CIA ran secret mind control experiments.
It's a tale of a creature that's been seen by many, but believed by few.
And experts say there have been reported sightings of paranormal activity.
And there was this creature, and it ran down this hill.
They say something was flying over their house, and they have no idea what it was.
How the world's most powerful individuals are actually shape-shifting reptilians.
My scariest ghost hunting experience.
Jason. DB Moffatt in just a few moments, continue talking about his book called The Misbirth. In the meantime, tomorrow night we've got Michael Bryan joining us. He's a travel psychologist. He's actually the travel psychologist, talking about his book that he co-authored with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. He's actually got a couple of those. It's the Road to Strange series, including The Road to Strange, Travel Tales of the Paranormal and Beyond, and The Road to Strange, UFOs, Aliens, and High Strangeness.
Which pretty much is everything we cover on this show.
It really is. It really is the whole gamut. There's a story that's come out of Washington State that is a little bit disturbing that I wanted to share. In Mount Vernon, Washington, a man has murdered and decapitated his girlfriend, saying that he received instructions and had spoken to God.
God seems pretty dark.
God, according to this gentleman, God said that he was to do that. He took their toddler, they had a 3-year-old, to say goodbye to mommy after he slayed this woman. And the boy, who's the man, I guess, his name is Timothy Hernandez, is 32 years old, was just sitting and waiting because he did this in his parents' home. And when his parents got home from, of all places, church, they found him there with the body of his girlfriend and the woman's head resting on her back. He decapitated her after killing her. And when the police showed up, he said, God made me do it, or God spoke to me and told me to do it. I highly doubt that God had anything to do with that heinous act. But it just presents one of those situations where I think, and this is my own read of this situation, is there's a mental illness issue there that needs to be addressed, and we talk about these things on the program a lot. Whether it's possession cases, or whether it's even just standard paranormal cases where people are seeing things or hearing things. The first thing that needs to be resolved is mental health.
Things that really need to be looked at when we come into your home.
Yeah, key stuff. All right, let's return to our conversation with DB Moffatt. Again, his book is called The Misbirth. And DB, where can people get the book?
Amazon.com is where they can get the book, see previews for the book, get a little bit of background on me, and everything else. That would be the I think the most convenient way to do it would be Amazon.com. And I would also add that for those people, commercial buyers, bookstore owners, and whatnot, there are some the publishers have provided quite a steep discount for quantity purchase. If you don't mind, I just wanted to get back and clarify something I said earlier regarding teenage bullying, and I didn't want to come off as conveying that boys have it tougher than girls. I was just speaking from my own experience as a guy, but as I mentioned earlier, we have two daughters, and they both experience their share of bullying. So teenage harassment, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, bullying, is not strictly confined to the male, if you will.
Oh, no, and I totally agree with you on that. I have three daughters and three sons, so I've seen it from both ends. And, it's just as bad. It doesn't matter if it's male or female. And you make a great point when you were saying it earlier, is they have these avenues where when they post something, there's, 20, 30, 40 other classmates that are seeing these posts, or other children that they know. So it helps really fuel it, because some are feeding off the bully and so forth. And it's not like it was 20, 30 years ago, where, again, you made a great point. Somebody wanted to say something about you, well, they come up to your face and they'd say it. And a lot of times you'd settle it right then and there and call it a day, and things would be resolved. But it's not that kind of a world anymore.
Well, in many cases as well, just let me add to that, it takes a lot more guts for someone to come up to somebody and say something in person, whereas when they can hide behind the mask and the veil of social media, they're willing to say things that they just would not say to another person face to face. It's almost the same thing as road rage. You do things in your car.
Some of my experiences along that very avenue, there were instances where there would be physical situation, and once it was settled, it was almost like two athletes coming away with a mutual respect for one another. I mean, it was whatever the issue was, it was settled then and there. And I'm not saying you become best of buddies, but there was just each could move on, and it was done, and it was over, and it did not sort of fester. But what you're saying, as I say, in terms of the social media aspect, instead of it being settled one way or the other, it seems to just fester and grow. And I think that's what can really start to mentally affect a young person going through a period in life that is tough enough without adding a layer of difficulty. Calling out of a phone book, trying to sell life insurance of all things, and which was kind of an interesting experience because it allowed me to get fairly proficient on the phone, if you will. And of course, then as the financial services industry evolved, we started getting into all sorts of other types of investments and whatnot, and I was able to do okay financially, and which ultimately allowed me the time to devote to what I enjoy doing, and that's writing. And so, from that vantage point, right now I'm a full-time writer, if you will. And as I said, the Misbirth just came out. My my first book, Beltway Justice, came out a few years ago, which is a totally different genre. That's a political satire that is predicated on today's capital called Washington, D.C., or some people refer to it as the swamp. And so I got a kick out of that. So that was kind of fun, and which again prompted the Misbirth, because I wanted to do a totally different genre. And people kind of asked me, well, are you trying to build a they call it a reading community, kind of thing. I mean, and Harry Potter I'm not, if you will. I mean, each book that I'm writing is totally different genre, different characters, and different purposes. And for me, that keeps things different, and to a certain degree keeps me fresher.
As we continue to explore themes in your book, The Misbirth, let's talk about people and how they can be awfully challenged to act what we would call morally, ethically, or even legally in some cases. What is it about people that they seem to be drawn
But anybody that is drawn to what I call the street. There's an old expression that I don't think will ever go out of style, and that is street. And anybody who's lived or experienced the street, if you will, knows exactly what I'm talking about. And anybody who fantasizes about it or romanticizes about living the life on the proverbial street is either never has, or once they do, they will be greatly disappointed.
Well, yeah, you always hear people wanting to, better themselves from that, never wanting to go to that.
We're talking with DB Moffatt. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about his book, The Misbirth. We've got a lot more to talk about.
All right, you're listening to Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
Nashville cats play clean as country water. Nashville cats play wild as Mountain Dew. Nashville cats been playing since they's babies. Nashville cats get work before they're two.
number of ants on the Tennessee anthill. Yeah, there's 1,352 guitar cases in Nashville. And anyone that unpacks his guitar can play twice as better than I will. Yes, I was just 13, you might say I was a musical proverbial knee-high. When I heard a couple new sounding tunes on the tubes and they blasted me sky high. And the record man said everyone is a Yellow Sun record from Nashville. And up north here ain't nobody buys them. And I said, but I will. And it was Nashville Cats.
Probably recognize that voice from the song "Welcome Back, Kotter." Remember the theme song?
I know. I love the song, the theme song "Welcome
Same
Back, Kotter,"
voice.
but I have no idea. I've never heard that song in my life.
Well,
and that's what I said to you on break. I'm like, who was? I've never heard that. In my
And I'm
life.
not going to say who it was because that's up to the audience trying to figure out what the common theme is through our bumper music tonight. So you guys will figure that out. Welcome back to the program. It's Beyond Reality Radio. Our phone number is 844-687-7669 if you want to be part of our discussion. And we will be taking calls for the bumper music theme later. Don't do that yet, okay? That's not, Slick Eddie will not let those calls through right now. But we're talking with DB Moffatt about his book called The Misbirth. And we've been talking about a number of different themes that are in the book and discussed in the book. And one of the things we haven't touched on yet, DB, is kind of the circumstances of birth, because a lot of what your characters go through are related to how they were brought into this world. Are circumstances of birth something that will automatically predetermine what our fate will be?
I would say it depends upon the circumstances surrounding those births. But ultimately, no, I think it comes down to the individual themselves. I mean, you can be born into a situation where you have a wonderful, loving family, caring family, a family that adequately provides for you both emotionally and financially, and for whatever reason turn out to be not such a nice person. And contrary, you can be born into circumstances that are not quite that advantageous, and yet pull yourself up by, what do they say, that by the bootstraps, if you will,
right?
And go on to lead a very
the I don't know if Ted Bundy is one of these people, but the serial killer and the thing is, they had such a normal life. They were raised in a middle class, loving family, this, that, and the other thing. Yet they turn out to be something very, very different than that. And then we've heard the other stories where there have been people born into very, very dismal circumstances, and those dismal circumstances have turned out to be the motivating factor, which makes them very great people.
Exactly. Getting back to the story that you mentioned earlier about that tragedy that just took place in, was it Mount Vernon, Washington?
Yeah,
said?
it was. We have about 30 seconds before we have to jump into break.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, anyway, I mean, listening to that whole situation, I don't think it had anything to do with God. I think he just wanted to make the people around him as miserable as he is.
Well, it seems like he did it well then. So, all right, so we're gonna take a quick break and a lot more to come. You listen to Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
Go home.
imagine that a lot of the experiences that you write about, some of the characters, some of the things the characters went through are directly inspired. I mean, maybe inspired is not the right word. Influenced by experiences you had in your life. When is the result, as the book ends and these issues become somewhat resolved toward the end of the book, is that also autobiographical as well? I mean, is this really kind of a shadow of kind of things that you went through from start to finish?
With literary embellishment, if you will.
Sure.
Some of the actual occurrences in the misbirth did not actually, or no, physically take place, but yes, by and large, it was based upon, I won't call it real life, I don't know if there is such a thing, but true life experiences. So, yes, and which, as I say, helped. In other words, I didn't have to sit down and try to create a bad guy. They were, I encountered a number of less than nice people, and during those years. So it was more or less depicting reality and coming up with fictional names, kind of thing.
Yeah, of
really
course.
all it came down to.
When people read the book, what are you hoping they walk away with when they've finished the last chapter, finished the last page, and closed the back cover? Is it more than entertainment? Is it more than just entertainment?
Well, as I said from the outset, I wanted it to be a provocatively entertaining read, but I think, again, it gets back to what we've been discussing this evening, and that is it's utmost, if nothing else, you've got to, again, take a negative and make it a positive and move, as you put it, and move forward, and always take solace in the fact that, hey, even though this wasn't my fault, I'm going to overcome, and not only overcome, but I'm going to succeed. And I think that's what I was hoping most people would come away with when they when they finish the book.
Who are some of your literary influences or inspirations?
Well, personally, I think the author that I would say I drew a lot upon was James Joyce. I remember, and I mention him, I'm reading him in the book. He had a tremendous influence on me in terms of his stream of consciousness approach into the craft of his writing. But as a kid, I guess my favorite author was Ian Fleming, James Bond. And
nice.
what amuses me, guys, is if you read those books, 007 was not the white knight with the white hat, if you know what I mean. There was a dark side to James Bond that is rarely depicted in any of those movies. So that I found kind of interesting.
Well, it's funny how different things like that, I mean, right down to some of the original stories of Snow White and all that stuff, how different they are when they make it to into movies and so forth.
Very true. It's very true, and I think that is a direct result of trying to appeal to a wider ranging audience, quite honestly. And as I say, which I guess is from a financial perspective makes sense. But I'm just saying that I just remember because they feed off themselves. I mean, that's just exactly what happens. And more times than not, unfortunately, or at least in the case of the characters in the misbirth, they kind of allow those string of bad incidents to take place because, after all, in their minds, none of this was their fault to begin with. So, and if I'm going to be miserable, so is everybody around me, kind of thing. Which, as I say, it sounds dark. It's like what you mentioned about the back cover at the outset of our conversation. It's not as dark as it would seemingly be.
DB, what's next for you?
What is next for me? I started another book, which I had to put on hold for almost a year now. My mom, who is 92 and was living in Winter Park, Florida, Orlando, Florida, is no longer capable of living by herself. I mean, physically she's okay, but I mean, it's up to a time. And so she, I had to take care of her, wrap up the situation down there. She's been living with us, and next week we'll be going into a place which is independent living, not assisted, not nursing home, not assisted. It's called independent living, which is an actual house, and we've been there several times, and it's just actually moving from one house to another, but I think it's going to work out very nicely for her. But in the interim, it's been sort of difficult to actually sit down and focus on this next book. But I think over the next several weeks, I will get back to it. And again, it's a totally different genre than the misbirth or Beltway Justice, for that matter.
Yeah, it's tough when your mind's everywhere else and you're focusing on those other important things to really be able to focus on sitting down and just writing.
Well, again, it's it's funny. I did a piece recently. They wanted to know the getting into the actual process of writing. What do you do and whatnot, and the one thing that I focused on in that article was I have found, in my experience, when it comes to writing, that the most important thing you've got to learn is when to stand up and walk away. Because you and only you know, as a writer, when you're not on your A game. And when you're not on your A game, that is time to just completely void yourself of that current project. Because when you return, you're going to find that not only have you saved yourself a lot of aggravation, you've also saved yourself a lot of time. So that's what I've learned, not only during the process of writing, but also as I've been helping my mother adjust and then readjust to another phase in her life.
Well, DB, we're out of time. Thank you so much for spending it with us and sharing
She is a very, very valuable asset to your operation.
Oh, well, thank you so much, and thanks for coming and hanging out with us, DB. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Oh, I look forward to that as well. Have a good night.
All right, have a great night.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, and again, thank you to DB, but what we're going to do now is we're going to go to break. Phone lines will be open for people to call in and participate in trying to come up with what the theme was in our bumper music tonight. We'll have a T-shirt for the first person that gets it. But we're not going to give you multiple guesses. We're going to give you one shot at it when you get on the line, and then we have to move on to the next person.
So tell me, I'm writing it down. Is that right, JV?
That looks right to me.
Oh my gosh, I won a T-shirt. Is it the one on your?
You could use one, but it looks at you right now.
Hey, come on, tank tops are in. It's 90 some odd degrees outside.
I know. It's
all right,
hot.
the phone number is 844-687-7669. Again, toll free at 844-687-7669. You're listening to Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll be back after this.
Gonna get my
Welcome back to Beyond Reality Radio with Jason and JV. Thanks again to DB Moffatt for joining us, sharing his book and the inspiration behind his book, The Misbirth, with us tonight. All right, so we're going to start taking calls, Jay, to see who has figured out what the common theme is, what the thread is through all our bumper music tonight. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if the first person's going to get it. I don't know if it'll take 10 people. I don't know how many people.
If anybody will get it in general.
Yeah. I think it's kind of easy. However, if somebody gets it, we're still going to go to all the calls. So don't hang up, because we still want to see how many people actually had figured it out when they called in. So if you would, just stay on the line, even if somebody gets it, although only the first person is going to win themselves a T-shirt.
All right.
All right, is that fair?
Well, yeah, that sounds pretty fair. So let's go to the phone line.
All right, let's go to, this is Norman. Norman's calling out of Florida. Hey, Norman, welcome to the program.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, Norman.
Is it about a sunrise?
It's a great guess, Norman, but it isn't. It isn't. What song made you think it was about a sunrise?
Oh, boy.
All of them?
Yeah, all of them, but
good. Yeah.
Anyways.
Great guess. Appreciate you calling in. All right, let's go to Greg. Greg is in Colorado. Hey, Greg, welcome to the program.
Hey.
What do you think?
I really have no idea. I'm going to say bands covering other bands.
Oh, that's a great guess. Actually, we just heard the Beatles doing Kansas City, which clearly was a cover. But no, that's not the answer we're looking for. But thanks for taking a shot for us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Have a great night.
Let's go to Lelania. I believe Lelania's in Missouri. Are you in Missouri, Lelania?
You are correct.
Okay, I
or
remember
Misery,
that.
however you want to pronounce
right.
it.
All right, so you heard the songs. You've been listening. You guys have been chatting about it. What do you think the common theme is in the bumper music tonight?
I'm going to go with geography.
Well, that's close. That's darn close, but it's not specific enough.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Good night.
Let's go to, this is Julie. Julie is in Washington. I'm assuming it's Washington State. Is that right, Julie?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the program.
Welcome to the show.
Have you heard the bumper music all night?
Yes, except the second one when there were problems with the buffering.
Yeah, we did have some issues there.
Yeah. Common thread that I got from it was traveling and going from place to place with each of the songs.
Yeah, that's a really good guess as well. It's very close to what Lelania said with geography, but it's not the answer we're looking for.
Sorry.
It's very, very close. It's just not it, though. Wow, do you think maybe we won't get an answer to this tonight?
I don't know. Well, let's find out.
I mean, we left we left plenty of time here, so
yeah. Well, it's one of those ones where it took me a while to say, yeah, but I probably cheated. But anyways, but it's one of those ones that I had to really sit there and think about.
Well, it's interesting because you can't make a guess until the last song is played, because that could throw a wrench in the whole works here. And I'm going to list the songs. By the way, the number's 844-687-7669. If you want to try to do this, we have a T-shirt on the line for you. But I'm going to name the songs now. I'm going to try to make this a little easier in case not everybody got them all. So we had America with Horse with No Name. We had the Doobie Brothers, China Grove. We had Boston with Hitchin' a Ride. We had the Beatles with Kansas City. We had the Bee Gees with Massachusetts. We had the Lovin' Spoonfuls with Nashville Cats. We had Chicago with Wake Up Sunshine. And we had Atlanta Rhythm Section with So Into You.
Okay.
That's the whole list.
I don't know. It's one of those ones that might be throwing some people off.
I think, there's some intentionally misleading things in there, but if you think about it, it's I thought it was easy. I don't know. Then again, I picked the songs.
So. Yeah, well, you think it's easy because you're the guy who came up with it. So.
It's true. The question is now guessing in any of the chat rooms is not going to count. So if you want to call in, we've only got time for one more phone call. We've got open lines right now because I think I may have stumped folks.
So, anyways, while we're waiting for that phone call, make sure you tune in tomorrow. We've got Michael Bryan coming on, the travel psychologist. We'll be discussing the book that he co-authored with Rosemarin Ellen Guiley, along with his own books. So make sure you tune in and check that out. He's also known for the Road to the Strange series, which is co-authored with Rosemary Ellen Guiley of the Road to Strange.
All right, let's see if we can fit one of these in here because we're going to run out of time. This is Vince, of course, a good friend of the program. Hey, Vince, do you have a guess for us?
Yeah, international airports.
Great guess. Great guess. Not the right one, though, but thanks for calling in. Let's go to Karen, another friend of the program. Hey, Karen.
Hi. I wasn't going to call, but I'm going to.
Well, you've got about 30 seconds.
So
Do you think you can wrap this one up for us?
Moving?
That's not it. Not it. They're all kind of close, and all the answers. All the answers are kind of close, and I can see why people would think that.
But you should probably just come out and tell them what it is.
No, I think maybe we'll hold it over. Actually, we might take one more call here.
Right,
I think we have time to squeeze one more in.
20 seconds.
Very, very quickly here. Just waiting for Slick to pass it off to me, and we will do this. And this might be the magic call.
Let's see.
This might be the one.
All right, so
this might be the one. Here we go. Okay. All right. So, it's Deirdre. Hey, welcome to the program.
Hello.
Hey, what's your guess, son?
Is it cities in America?
Yeah, it's not cities in America. No, it's darn close, but that's not it. All right, this one's just going to have to go, and we'll hold it over for tomorrow.
It'll have to wait. But all right, so that's pretty much going to do it for us tonight. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. We got another great show. It's Jason and JV Beyond Reality Radio. We'll catch you all tomorrow.
With a big smile on my face, and it never feels out of place. And you're still probably working at a 9-to-5 pace. I wonder how bad that tastes when you see my face. Hope it gives you hell, hope it gives you hell. When you walk my way, hope it gives you hell, hope it gives you hell. Now where's your picket fence, love? And where's that shiny car? And did it ever get you?
Okay. That's right. I make the rules and I make the answers. My answer is the only right answer. Right? That's how it works here. Someone said cities. Massachusetts is not a city. Nice try, though. So, So tomorrow night I will reveal the answer. We won't take calls for that because it's just too much time in between. Plus, we'd have to wait to the end of the program just to not disrupt the flow. So we'll do that tomorrow. We'll reveal what it was. What do you mean, come on? 70s theme. Wow, I'm really surprised. I know someone said states. I don't know. But again, it was America, Horse with No Name, China Grove, Doobie Brothers, Hitch a Ride by Boston, Kansas City, The Beatles, Massachusetts by the Bee Gees, Nashville Cats by the Lovin' Spoonful, Wake Up Sunshine by Chicago, and So Into You by Atlanta Rhythm Section. So everybody, I mean, the people were close. People were close. We're just, we were looking for something a little more specific. That's all. You guys are good, though. And Doug has kind of disappeared, I think. Yeah, it's not traveling, though. I mean, you could travel to all those places, I suppose, but if in fact it's places that we're looking, it's not places that I've driven to. Not places that Ghost Hunters have been either. I love the guesses. I think that's awesome, but Selt to China, what does that mean? Doug does fall asleep, Lala, but he's awake. He's responding right now. Places that have great coffee. Oh, yeah. I really didn't think it would be this difficult. I mean, you guys are circling the answers, but except China. What about except China? What about except China? I'm really curious what you're thinking there. Songs from 78. I think Nashville Cats was from the 60s. Kansas City by the Beatles was definitely in the early 60s. Massachusetts was in the 60s. Boston was 76, I believe. Not places that I've driven to. Are you wearing pants? Yes, I'm wearing pants. What does that have to do with it? Well, I'm wearing shorts. What does that have to do with any songs you've sung? No, I wouldn't do something so, personal. I mean, how would anybody know that other than me? Man, Doug, I'm really surprised at you. You should be guiding these folks in this quest for an answer. I'm just having fun with the absurd guessing. It's awesome. Yeah, it did get weird with the pants question. I don't know what that was about. I've got actually the shorts on that I had the Sharpie explode in the cargo pocket. No, Vince, that's not right. That's not the one. Okay. All right, Wrenchy. Just so happens I'm not either. I'd give you everything I've got for a little peace of mind, Doug. I would. Promise. Yeah, I love these shorts. Just because there's a silly Sharpie explosion in one of the pockets, I'm not getting rid of them. No. It is a great Beatles song. All right. It's after 2 a.m.